All right, welcome back. We are going to continue on and we're going to upgrade our skill to a very advanced technology in Excel. Now, let's start by opening up our Excel again. So once again, I'm going to open up my Excel up here. I already have it opened. Just take a minute. Okay, so this time I'm going to go to the shortcut. You can see from here, actually, all those history of the recent file that I opened is right over here, and our Excel file is right on top of it. I'll just click on it. It's opened. Okay. A quick review for what we did. We collect the data, processed it, and then we generated new features. One is Coca-Cola return, another is Microsoft return. Well, we were pretty excited, but if we look closely to the very end, we see those divided by 0 arrows, which we don't really want those. Okay. So what are we going to do with it? Okay, the easiest way, of course, you may just delete them, but we're going to do a more constructive way. Okay. So let me go back to the beginning, revisit the formula that we have here. So this formula, remember, that was a formula that we used to calculate the return. And we did use the drag and the double click techniques to make the Excel did the hard work for us. Now, given that there are arrows or divided by 0 arrows up there, we don't really want to see them in the Excel worksheet. And the way that I'm going to deal with it, it's so-called if arrow function. Okay, so the function is IFError. Okay. Now, well, just to show you what exactly what the IFError function does, I will go back to the formula bar again, type in equal, and I'm going to type in this function IFError. So it popped up here, and I'm going to double click it. After I double click it, and I have the function, and I have a hands of what this function does. Okay. Well, what I would do is that I'm going to click on this if arrow downstairs here. Okay. Yes. And it will give me a help function, say, okay, if arrow function, what it does. Let's read it. You can use if arrow function to trap handle arrows in formula. If arrow returns a value, you specify if formula a value is to an arrow. Otherwise, it returns result of the formula. So here is the syntax. So the first one is going to be the value, second one is going to be what happened if arrow, and our dear baby is up here. Okay, it's a nasty one, divided by 0 arrow. So it does has the ability to take care of that. Now let's take this into practice. Okay, so I'm going to hit escaped. Escaped is the key on your keyboard on your left. up corner. So most of the time, this is a left saver. If you're stuck in somewhere in Excel, hit escape, maybe sometimes multiple times, it'll save you from, redo the work. Okay. So say that I have trouble up here. I was unintentionally hit it somewhere in the cell, which I never mean to. Now I can hit escaped. Now everything cleared up. Okay. Just a little trick up there. Now let's go back to the original formula, which is our granddaddy formula in the column D2. Instead of using this direct calculation of return, this time I'm going to apply this IFError formula. So I'm going to type IFError. It's already here. Double click into it. Okay. And for all the functions, do not forget you need parentheses. Okay. And if I click on this fx, then we will see a pop-up window will help us to determine what to do. Okay, now I'm going to click on this fx. fx saying, okay, we need two so-called arguments for this IFError function. The first one, of course, is going to be the value. And what happened if error occurs, for example, divide by 0 error. For this case, I'm just going to leave it as a blank. Blank means nothing. However, in order for us to input nothing, we have to use quotation marks. So I'm going to use double quotation marks, and then followed by another double quotation marks. Okay. So that represents nothing, empty. Okay. In Excel. So double quotation mark, that means empty. Okay, so I'm gonna hit enter. Okay. You see this number did not really change whatsoever. And I'm gonna do the drag technique again. I'm gonna just drag it to the right. Okay. Now you see that the first return for both Coca-Cola and Microsoft are calculated. The number did not change at all. More importantly, both cells, both returns are selected. Now we can do the double click tag again. I'm going to move the cursor again to the little dot. Here we go. Oh, here we go. And I'm going to double click. There we go. So Excel automatically filled all the numbers for us. Ooh, look. Beauty, right? So there is no divide by arrows. Those early divide by 0, those arrows are gone. Okay. However, if you move the cursor back to the cell, the formula is still here. Okay, so let's look at the formula again. So the formula actually is saying, well, the value itself actually is divided by 0 arrow. However, because we have the IFError function, so this one just cleared up to be nothing. Okay, to be the empty cell. Nice, right? So this is the result. So the formula result is empty. See, there is nothing here, right? Okay, so I'm gonna hit OK. Well, now we beautified the returns. Okay, now I'm going to do something a little bit more interesting up here. Now that we have all these returns, right? We calculated all the returns. Now, what we really want to do is that we want to learn something about this return. And mathematically, we want to know the average of those returns and the standard deviation of those returns. And the average return sometimes, I mean most of the times, will be referred as a return and also referred as the stock performance. The standard deviation of the return, okay, is referred as the riskiness of the stock, okay? So performance, that's going to be the average return. Standard deviation, that's going to be the riskiness of the stock return. All right. So those are the measures that we want to come up with. Okay. So given that, okay, they are important, and I'm going to highlight them. Okay. So, and this is going to be, I'm going to just make them bold. Maybe even more important. Okay. So you can actually change the format, but I would just rather say, okay, so make them bold, and I'm going to make them a little bit bigger here. See that this is going to be the font. I can make the font a little bit bigger. I'm going to use a bigger font for those important measures. Well, so we said this is going to be average return. Okay, just to make the terminology straight. So this is going to be the standard deviation return. Okay. And we also have Coca-Cola and Microsoft. Okay. All right. So far, let me just do a quick review here. Okay. We fixed the divide by zero arrow by using this IFError function. And then we come back to say, okay, as a finance people, we want to know the performance, which is going to be the average return. And the standard deviation of the return will be the risk. Okay. Now let's do it. Okay. So for Coca-Cola, okay, well, if you want to know the average, we actually can just use a function so-called average. Let's see, the average is right here. I'm going to double click the average, okay? And then I'm going to refer to all the returns of Coca-Cola from D2. And here I'm going to pick up D2, D3, all the way down to the 61. Okay, then I hit enter. So that's going to be the average return for Coca-Cola. Okay. And I can also do the standard deviation of the return. I'm going to put equal sign as well, and standard deviation formula or function is stdev. Okay, I'm going to use stdev.s, means the sample standard deviation. Double click it. And I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to pick up D2, D3, D4, all the way to D61. And then I hit enter again. I'll come back to this. Average return, average return and standard deviation, right? Return, performance, standard deviation, risk. Okay. I'm going to apply. Okay. Look very carefully here. So let me do a quick review once again. We did the stock return, we did the stock standard deviation. Okay. And we did for Coca-Cola, and we want to say, well, is the dragging technique still going to work? So now I actually picked both H2 and H3, and I'm going to drag it across to Microsoft, see what happens. Look, I was here, drag it across. I was here, drag it across. Okay, now we have it. Okay, this is going to be Microsoft return Microsoft standard deviation. Okay. Another thing that we want to know here is, well, when we're talking about stock returns, you may heard people always say the annual return for S&P 500 is around 10 to 11%. But here, let me make it clear. Look at our data here. The frequency of the data is monthly. Therefore, I want to make it a little bit more clear. I want to make sure this is monthly average return. Okay. And let me just close that so that we have a better view of that. And I'm going to make it a little bit smaller here. Okay. So we have monthly average, and then we have monthly standard deviation. Right? And I'm going to wrap the text so that I can see everything here. Okay. And as we mentioned, right? So professionally, we should refer this to annual return and annual standard deviation. Okay. So how are we going to convert the monthly to annual? For the return, you can imagine that should be very, very easy, right? So for the return, what we need to do is we just multiply 12 to the monthly return. So this is going to be the monthly return times 12. That's going to be the annual return. Okay, this time I'm going to put this to percentage so that we have a better understanding of that. So I'm going to change the format of the cell as percentage, and I'm going to give it a little bit more decimals up here. 8.76%. This is going to be for Coca-Cola. However, we don't really know much about that. How are we going to convert the monthly standard deviation of the return to annual standard deviation of the return, right? Well, here I'm going to pretend that I have no idea about that. And I'm going to ask the question to somebody else. What am I going to ask? Okay. Let me think. Okay. There are things like ChatGPT and other so-called, generative AI, large language models. Well, I would just ask them. Okay, so, and we also happen to have a course website, course chatbot. Let's try from there. Okay, so our course chatbot is finance-tutor.azurewebsites.net. Okay, finance-tutor.azurewebsites.net. Okay, I'm going to choose that one, see if this one actually knows anything. So I'm going to ask a question. Okay, I say, how do I convert monthly STDV to annual STDV. Okay. If we have any luck here. Okay. It does. Okay. It's saying to convert monthly standard deviation to annual standard deviation, you need to use the following formula. We need to have the annual standard deviation is pretty much the monthly standard deviation, okay, times the square root of 12. Looks like interesting, right? So for the return, we just multiplied 12, but for the standard deviation, we actually multiply the square root of the 12. Okay, so multiply by the square root of 12. Okay. So I'm going to follow the instruction here. So I'll say equals the standard deviation, monthly standard deviation times SQRT. That's the function for square root of 12. Okay, that's how many months of the year. And I'm going to, of course, format this as percentage as well. And give it 2 decimals. Okay, now I have calculated for Coca-Cola. I can just drag them once again for Microsoft as well. Okay, now let's take a look at this. Okay, also called interpret those. Okay, Coca-Cola return is 8%, definitely much lower than Microsoft for past 5 years. Coca-Cola has a risk of 18.65%, which is also lower than the Microsoft. However, if we try to say, well, the risk and the return trade-off, okay, so I will say, okay, risk, return, trade-off, okay. Do we have any measure on that? Okay, let's say that I still forgot what that measure is. Now I can go back to the chatbot that I developed and see that if I can get some help from there. And I'll just say, okay, risk and return trade-off measures. Do you know any of that? So here are some interesting measures actually came out from our chatbot up here. And I get to be honest with you. Okay, let's see the disclaimer again. AI generated content may be incorrect. This is one of the example. This one actually is not that correct. Okay, so I'm going to ask it again. Say, okay, what about sharp? What about sharp ratio? So now it's saying, okay, the sharp ratio is really the average return and divided by standard deviation. Okay. So the investor and the fund managers use sharp ratio to make informed decision about investment portfolio choice. have to understand whether return before you do the smart investment or without taking excessive risk. And this is actually the risk and return trade-off measure that I was looking for. Now you can see from here that, well, the AI may know something, okay, but it may not really know the whole thing. And your knowledge is still pretty valuable. But not really say it, we still have our job, right? Okay. So now I'm going to go back to the risk return trade-off. So I'm going to use an alternative Sharpe ratio here. Okay. So the Sharpe ratio definition, if we go back here again, it is the Sharpe ratio that we have. Okay. Is that we have to have the risk-free rate. Okay. They assume to be 3%. However, we don't really have the risk-free rate. Okay. So I'm just going to assume the risk-free rate is 0. So I was just going to use, okay, I'm just going to use the annual return divided by the annual standard deviation, get the risk and the return trade-off, so-called Sharpe ratio. Okay. You probably see that most of the time, okay, the Sharpe ratio is going to be annualized. That's the reason that we actually use annual returns and annual standard deviation. Okay. All right. So now let me calculate the risk and return trade-off. Well, I'm going to rename it a little bit. Actually, I'm going to say it's going to be use return divided by the risk. Okay. So the return is the one on the top. The risk is the one at the bottom. Okay. And this one, I don't need to be a percentage. So I'm going to change it back. But that's all right. Let me just do it for Microsoft again. I'm going to reformat it. Okay, right click, format cell, and I'm just going to make it numbers. Okay, and I want a few more decimals as we always do. Okay, so this is what the risk return trade-off actually telling us. Okay, let me use the format brush to brush the return divided by risk as a key measure as well. So we want this number to be as high as possible. Okay. The example that we saw in the chatbot was 0.63 for the return divided by risk. And here what we have for Coca-Cola is 0.47, for Microsoft is 1.259. Okay, the larger the number, the better all the performance. So in this case, if you have to pick up the winner based on the return and the risk, Microsoft is your winner. Okay, so that's going to be your winner here. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. Okay, and I'm going to wrap it up for all those stock return and risk analysis for now. Okay, so the objective for the study up to here is that we want to find out annual stock return and annual stock risk. Return is measured by the average of the returns, and the risk is measured by the standard deviation. Okay, so we started by collecting the data, then we processed the data, and we fixed all the errors that we had, and then we use the formulas from Excel, which including IFError, average, standard deviation for the sample, stdv.s, square root, and eventually we figured out how we compare which stock is better in terms of return and risk. Okay. And Microsoft was our winner compared to the Coca-Cola for past 5 years. Okay, so I will stop here and I will let you to replicate all this work and then make sure that you will be able to follow along. Okay, all right, I will see you in the next video.